Welcome to Flow with the Girl, Leena. I am so excited to have you on. We have so much to talk about. At least in my mind, I have so much to talk about. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
So first, I would love if you shared more about who you are, what you do, and why you got into doing what you do.
Oh my, that is a very large question. Where do I start? So my name is Leena Lemos. I am the founder of House of Enlightenedhood, which is a New Earth community organization. Still figuring out how to explain exactly what it is because it's so much. I also host my own podcast. I have a book called Dear Luna Wilde that's behind me right there. And there's just so many things. Oh my gosh. So I'd say the most recent chapter of this started when I was 6 months pregnant. And I was kind of at a crossroads with my life. I had been working in media and marketing. And sorry, I'm a little sick. So, not sick. I have allergy congestion. And that's what I'm going with. So, clear my throat. I was at a crossroads. I had been working in media and marketing for 10 years and was on the brink of a spiritual reawakening, shall I say. I loved my job. I worked for a software company in the PR industry, got to create all their content, do a lot of really fun stuff, but the management shifted and I basically got demoted at 6 months pregnant. And on top of that, I had a terrible pregnancy. I was really frustrated with the way that people were treating me. I felt really, demoralized, humanized, had prenatal depression, and I decided that I wanted my life to look a lot more like how I was beginning to feel on the inside, which was this rewild, like ripped, wide open, raw, vulnerable, questioning everything version of myself. And then at 6 months pregnant, I got this download from the universe, and it was one word, and it was enlightenedhood. And I thought to myself, this is really in line with how I'm feeling. It felt very much like a perfect descriptor for this stage of my life where everything was crumbling. I was questioning everything. I was furious. I was healing. I don't know, all the things. And I just knew that I had to follow where that would lead. And then I went to an astrologer and mainly for a reading so she could tell me when my daughter was coming because I was over my pregnancy at that point. I was like, when is this baby coming? I'm so over this. And she saw in my chart that I was going to start doing things with global education and working with mothers. And I said, it's funny you say that because I have this word enlightenedhood and I have no idea where it's going to lead or anything. And so she helped me pick this date of May 15th to launch whatever, just something, this imaginary project that I thought that I was going to put out into the world. And so then I had my daughter and I started thinking a lot about enlightenedhood and what it could become. And because I was so frustrated with the rhetoric that we put on pregnant women, I was so lost and so sick and struggling so much. And all people could ask me was, how's your baby eating or sleeping? Nothing. How are you? How are you doing? How is this big life change happening? How are you okay? No one asked me that. And so I thought, I need a place, I need a space where I can feel seen, where I can ask other women what the fuck is happening, and where I can have these really deep conversations that I'm yearning for. So I decided that Enlightenedhood would become a podcast. So at 4 weeks postpartum, I launched this podcast called Enlightenedhood. And I also created a website where it was these questions, these little forms that other women would fill out about how spirituality happened to them in motherhood. And then the floodgates just opened and it became something that was accessed in over 100 countries in under 6 months. And it just blew up and it became very quickly apparent that this was a conversation that people were aching for and that needed to happen. And it also just pushed me right into the spiritual space and launched me on my own healing path because I think at that time I was still very much not even sure what spirituality was to me. I just knew that I was so drawn to it. And then this is a kind of windy story. And then in January of 2020, I launched a spiritual education membership for moms. And it was like, this is a new decade, let's go. And then the pandemic hit in March, which sent me and allowed me the time to truly, truly, truly do the deep shadow work, the deep healing. And I kind of took a step back from everything. And then in September of 2020, all of the motherhood aspect of it kind of burned to the ground. It's like, great. Everything I've been building for the past year and a half is now just, I don't feel called to do it anymore. And in my own healing and awakening and stepping further and deeper within myself, I felt really called to be able to serve everyone. And so I was at the beach. I live in New Jersey and they call it the shore, but I refuse to call it that. So I was at the beach and I was just sat there and I was like, okay, what do I do now? Do I just give up? It's been a year and a half since I've been doing this. I'm really tired. What am I supposed to do? And all I heard was build the village, build the village. And I just saw all of the ways that the things that lit me up and how I knew I could serve in this platform that I had kind of already created. So that's when I made the decision to make it become House of Enlightenedhood. And it took another, what year is it? So another year and a half to make it what it is now. And it has been so deeply tied to my own growth and my own understanding of my spirituality. And what I mean by that is I think we wake up to remember who we truly are in a version of spirituality that is deeply crafted by capitalism and big business, where they're like, here's some shiny crystals for you. Here's what yoga looks like. And the more that we heal and unlearn, we begin to realize that none of that shit matters. And so I felt really called to build a space of how do we start that conversation on day one, where you are exactly perfect just the way that you are. You are amazing and gifted and spiritual just the way you are, but come learn, explore, heal, gather, be seen, and not feel like you have to put your peacock feathers up at all times in order to feel like you are worthy or credible in a spiritual space. Because I think a lot of spiritual spaces feel like that right now, and it can be really hard to feel like you are enough just as you are. So that's what House of Enlightenedhood has evolved into. And it is now, so we have an online global platform with almost 500 members, 15 countries represented. It is a free platform for anyone to use. It's the new, I like to call it the new spiritual social media, where there's no filters, no algorithms. We are all equal. We are all the teachers and the students. And then it is co-invested by a cooperative of healers and spiritual facilitators who are all kind of the leaders of our community. And as a community-based organization, it's the cooperative members. We all make the collective decisions together of how to run the space and really listen to all of our members of how we can collectively grow together. And it's just become this really beautiful space where people are truly showing up in organic ways. I stopped marketing it. So the way that it's grown is just by people coming, feeling seen, inviting other people. And then what's really exciting is this summer we're launching an in-person space outside of New York City to be a space for people to come, create content, attend events, and be kind of that in-person hub for House of Enlightenedhood, which is so exciting. And it's just happening and growing so fast. And on top of that, oh my gosh, there's so many things. And on top of that, what I've been personally working on on top of all of those things is there's been this new I'm calling it a new language that has been downloading through me called the Ascended Master Frequency. And so we're using that as kind of the language of the organization, where it's 12 archetypes that we all have within us. We all have like an expression of 3. And how can we use those to really claim our gifts and strip away all that shiny spiritual bullshit stuff and really be confident in who we are and know that it's enough? And how do we serve? How do we collaborate? How do we show up and build this idea of the new earth that we see everyone talking about on Instagram, but actually be the boots on the ground doing it in a really intentional, loving, compassionate, equal way? That's a really long answer to your question, but
that's okay. This is
well, we got there.
Yes. Holy cow. Okay. I'm so glad to. So I was going to ask you about like the archetypes and stuff. So we are going to get to
Yeah.
that. But first, the first question I want to ask is, if someone's listening and they're hearing spiritual awakening, what does that even mean?
Oh, okay. That's a good question. Um, to me, I would say it is a questioning of everything that we thought we knew about ourselves, the world, each other, and going within ourselves, removing the distractions, all the things, because maybe we rewind. We have been very conditioned in our society to believe that the power, happiness, answers, authority all exist outside of ourselves. It happened, go way, way back to the Council of Nicaea or whatever, when they decided what texts were going to live in the Bible. The one that they threw out happened to be the Gospel of Mary that they burned and hid for centuries, where it taught us that ascension, this idea of ascension, is going further within our own hearts and that God is within us. So to me, I think the spiritual awakening is looking at the world and saying, maybe I am more capable than I thought. Maybe I have more wisdom than I thought. Maybe I have more answers than I thought. And how do I peel back these layers of my beliefs, my experiences, my trauma to come back home to myself and recalibrate so I can be the compass of my life instead of what society is telling me that I should follow or should be.
Yep, makes sense. Yeah. Okay, that was good. What are a few things that someone can do? Like, I don't know, how does it, maybe everyone's different, but I feel like my spiritual awakening happened, it was kind of like a moment, like an enlightened realization, like in one moment, but I might have had little things that led up to that. Is that true for everyone, or like how does someone come to this spiritual awakening?
I think it can happen in two ways. I think one can be, but I think it's always kind of a slow crack. But I think for some of us, it's that slow crack. And some of us, it's a really traumatic event that happens where our whole reality is shook and we have to rebuild based on that and find the peace and healing within ourselves. But I always like to describe it as an egg. And if you imagine that like our soul is on the inside and we have these little moments that crack it open just a little bit and a little bit more. So maybe you attend a yoga class and you reconnect to your breath and your body. You're like, that feels really good. And it's a crack in the egg. And then you read a book that's talking about the universe and surrender and manifestation. Oh, I get it, another crack. And so I think a lot of times it's a slow crack until finally the egg just kind of opens and all the gooey stuff starts to spill out. And then we go into another level that's like a deep night of the soul, a dark night of the soul. Yeah.
I just got goosebumps for real because you saying that, I don't know if it was you using that analogy of the egg made total sense. And then me also at the same time thinking back to my experience, it totally was like maybe it was a moment of realization, but also I had been doing things like little things like
Yeah.
meditation and then yoga and listening
Yeah.
and reading things.
Yep.
And then it's like, and
Mm-hmm.
then it's crazy because if you're I was in a place where I didn't know of anyone who experienced these things or had these same beliefs. So when I would talk about it, like in my past relationship, when I talked about it, like I felt like he felt like I was crazy or like it didn't make sense to someone. And then I'm like, okay, maybe I'm oversharing. I can't, it's like I couldn't talk to someone about this stuff because that egg hadn't broke open for them.
Yes. And I always love the saying, I don't know who said it, but that people can only meet us as deeply as they've met themselves. And I think that's probably the hardest thing about being on this path is because we have these experiences and then it can be really hard to find that validation in our human life or to find the people that are like, yeah, that has happened to me and some. And so I think that's too, I didn't have that. And that's why I built it because we need that validation in our external, because then it makes our experiences real. Otherwise, it's all just happening in our head and we can be like, that didn't happen, or it might be crazy, or maybe both. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember I just was like, okay, I'm going to continue learning, listening, because I liked how I liked the person I was becoming and the things I was unlearning, like that deconditioning process. And what I did find was the people did come into my life eventually. Like I found other people or they came to me, but it's so great that you have this community, which I'm going to be joining. But yeah, it's so great that you have that, because anyone listening who they're in that same place, or maybe they want to kind of learn more, then they have this
Yep.
community of like-minded people.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're working on changing the infrastructure a little bit, where it's going to be a huge resource. Right now we have resource library, but the way that it's set up isn't very intuitive. And I don't know if anyone uses the Mighty Networks platform. So it's on Mighty Networks, but they're making huge changes coming up in the next few months. So we're really going to have a full spiritual awakening field guide resource library for everyone. So, and the idea is that it's there to serve kind of the entire path, because we do wake up, but then it's always kind of this constant cycle of, we feel really good, we explore more, we unlearn, we kind of have to go through that transmutation dark process, we come back out and then we go back in. And so to support all of those life cycles that we're going through within our path, I think is so important. And
Yeah. Yes, nice. That will be such a good resource. Wow. So let's also talk about now the ascended mastery frequency and the archetypes. I am so
yes,
curious.
yes, okay, so the so going back to when I was doing the shadow work in 2020, I had this really profound healing experience where, and mind you, I didn't grow up very religious. I went to a Methodist church growing up, but stopped. I didn't feel called to go in depth, and my parents really allowed us to explore religion. But I had this really intense healing experience where I was sometimes I don't know if anyone else does this, but I like learning songs on the keyboard, and then I record them and then do like the whole garage band karaoke thing. It's like my artistic self-release expression thing. So that day I was learning Let It Be by the Beatles. And so I was listening back to it. And the part where it says, Mother Mary comes to me speaking words of wisdom, there was something about listening to my own voice. And I just started sobbing uncontrollably. And it was during a part where I was really healing these aspects of myself of like, why do I feel like all these friendships fall away in my life? What is it about me? Why have I let go of these artistic, creative parts of myself? Really going down deep into those rabbit holes. And during that moment, it was like I almost went into another dimension and I saw Mary Magdalene, mind you, never seen really anything much about her. She just like walked across my room and then looked at me and said, "You're an activator." And then just kept walking and like went through the wall. I was like, what the actual fuck just happened? And I've been sitting with that for a really long time. And then I started meeting people who were calling me an activator. And I'm like, oh, you can see it too. Because the more I meditated and went within, I understood that there's just something within me that can activate something within you, whether it's an epiphany, a healing, a remembering. It's just something, being an activator, I activate you. And I noticed it firsthand last summer. I was talking to an old friend and I put my hand on her hand. Just that touch, she was sent into like, after I left for 5 days, like an ayahuasca-esque type, couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, was deep purging, healing thing. And she said, "What did you do to me?" I'm like, I don't know. I'm sorry. And then in late last year, I was meditating and I saw, and I'm a channel, I would like to say that. So I work a lot with the ascended masters and different cosmic beings. And so sitting there, and I meditate a lot to receive information. And so I was sitting there and I started seeing all these different ascended masters come in. And it was Kuan Yin and Yeshua and Mary Magdalene, but then it was almost like they all lined up and formed into one ball. And I remember writing in my journal, the ascended master frequency, because I was really trying to figure out what my gifts were and how to explain what they were doing, because at the time I had begun hosting these women's circles with my sister from a past life, and that's a whole other story. But
We'll get to it.
we'll get to it. But I was trying to, because my human brain always likes to like, well, explain it to me. I need an explanation to make sense of all these things. So that's what I was asking. And they were showing me this lock and this key of like how our gifts intertwine to make these healing circles really potent. And so they were explaining to me that as an activator, what I do is activate the ascended master frequency within other people. And these are the codes within our makeup, our DNA, our soul that are almost one removed from source. But where we've kind of went wrong in our lineage is the fact that we think that we're separate from these ascended masters, or we think that we're separate from gods or goddesses, when the whole point of being an expression from source is that we're just another expression of this essence of what it means to be like this pure source of, let's say, Yeshua's like compassion, or these really, the way that source expresses itself into what we would say are the ascended masters. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the deeper I got and the more that I was learning about it, I was basically told that now's the time we need to stop focusing on like, oh, I have the essence of Mary Magdalene, or I have the essence of, these people, and stop putting labels on it, but boil it down even further to what does that archetype or ascended master represent, because we all have those expressions within us and it's a much easier thing for us to digest. And it's funny because the more people I talked to about this had also received the information from their guides that you are an ascended master. And I think so many of us have received similar information, but our brain also goes like, what? No, that's stupid. I'm not this big, divine being. And so what the ascended master frequency allows us to do is to strip away that ego kind of and bring it back to the basics of the purest expression of our soul, how we can use those gifts to serve, how we can use them to collaborate, and how we can use them for our greatest healing opportunities, because they all have, the reverse side of the coin, the shadow elements that are our greatest healing. So this is all channeled. It's 12 different archetypes. And so let me see if I can go through them. There's the activator, the alchemist, the architect, the beacon, the manifester, the mirror, the keystone, the noble, the portal, the visionary, the wildling, and the way shower. And we all have a main archetype and 2 secondary expressions. And there are 660 possible combinations that we all have. And so now we're using this basically as the language for House of Enlightenedhood and a way to activate new earth leaders, basically to allow us to have this new language without these kind of egoic labels that really allow us to level the playing field almost, and allow us all to rise and see the ways that our gifts are such a unique expression. Because I feel like also in this current paradigm of spirituality, spiritual gifts have been put into a very tiny box, right? It's like you have the clair gifts and you can be clairsentient or clairvoyant, but from what I've seen, it's just so much bigger than that. And when we think of our gifts in such that small way, we forget that, like, what if you're really good with people and you have such amazing people skills? That's a spiritual gift. What if you can connect to plants and animals in a way that no one can? That's a gift. What if you can see the inner workings in your brain is almost like Tetris, and you have this spatial and this, systemic almost ability. That's a spiritual gift. So blowing the doors wide open as to how we can serve and really show up and let the other bullshit fall away, I think can really help us all see our fullest potential in maybe a box that we couldn't before.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. And I love how just everything that you just talked about. And I just had like 5 things come to my mind. So first question, so like this all came to you like kind of in meditation, all of the like the archetypes, like it just came to you, was like all in one meditation then?
So it's been over the point of that started in November-ish. So it's been about 4 or 5 months. And it's funny because the archetypes started showing up because the more people I started meeting, I started kind of pinpointing them and saying, like, oh, you're a portal. And the names weren't exactly clear because I started a list in my phone actually in probably January. And I started talking to people about them and they were resonating with them. And then I'd say it was about last month when I sat down and started writing these main themes, and then based off of that kind of got the clear picture through meditation.
Okay. So how does one find out what their archetype is?
You just know by looking at it. So that's the cool part, is that everyone, and if you don't know, I'd say too, another way to look at it is through the shadow elements. So we're working on creating kind of a whole university, and on the 25th I'm hosting like a live introduction to them to go more in depth about them, and then they're going to be part of House of Enlightenedhood, where if you want to dive into your archetypes you can, and hopefully that will be available by next month. And then we've also channeled and downloaded all of the master activations for them. So if you want to really kind of awaken those parts of you, because we have expressions of all 12 within us, and we can nurture and acknowledge all of them. It's just when we can truly focus on what our main gifts are, I think that can really help us have that North Star, really. Because for me, for instance, being an activator, the shadow side of that is I've had so much self-doubt about what my gifts actually are, because it's not very tangible. And you can't just say to someone, oh, I'm an activator. Like, what does that mean? What do you do? I'm an activator. You know, it's so hard to put words to. And the shadow side of that too is, with activators, a lot of times we kind of have specific soul contracts with other people that we have the contract to activate them. But then in our human life, it can feel like a lot of relationships are kind of one and done. Like, oh, that's great. You kind of we were friends for 3 months and then fell off the bandwagon, you know? And I've had so many relationships and experiences in my life that are like that. And to see it through that lens helps me give so much more compassion to that and kind of release the shame and the guilt and whatever I was holding on to for those types of woundings as well.
Yeah. Yep. And so can you be talking with someone and know what their archetype is?
In knowing a little bit more about them, yes. And
Yeah.
I can ask questions enough to get to it usually, but most people know, and or at least have it narrowed down to at least 5, where then we can go and say, okay, and I can ask questions and get to know a little better. Because again, we have the expression of all 12 and we have so many gifts. It's just, how do we hone them in?
Right. Yeah. Okay. I need to look more into this and all of those and kind of see it. As on your website too, I saw the archetypes and I didn't really read all of them. I just like a scan of it. So I need to go back and look again. But I don't know if this is like a separate thing or I don't know. Tell me your thoughts on this. But when you said portal, I was like, holy shit, because this was like at least 3 years ago, I think. I was living in a different town than I'm in now. And I went to the farmer's market with a friend. And there was a table and a lady there that I had never seen before. And I go to the farmer's market like I did back then, like every single weekend. And I had never seen her there. And she had like crystals and jewelry and things like that. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's my vibe. I'm going over there. And so I was looking at it and I started talking to her. And the friend I was with had actually seen her a couple times, maybe one other time. So they were talking and we just started talking. And she looks at me and she's like, do you know? I'm sure you know. but do you know that you are a portal?" And I'm like, Nope, I've never heard of that before." And I I kick myself because we got to talking and she's like, "Here, this is my card. I have a special email. Email me portal now in the subject line. I will know who you are. Let's get together. We'll talk about this." And I never did until just this year, and she hasn't responded. But I'm just like, "Why the fuck didn't I?" But I was also in this like transition of leaving my a relationship, and it just like work stuff, it just wasn't very good, and I don't know, I just put a lot of things off. So I'm like kicking myself. I'm like, what does that mean? And so I've been trying to like find someone who can tell me. I don't know, but what are your thoughts?
So a portal is, they're basically our highways to the dimensions. So they are amazing interdimensional travelers, have access to the other side, cosmic beings. But the thing about the portal is, while they're awakening and stepping into their gifts, you're open to everything. So there's a lot of information coming through at all times. It can be really hard to discern between what are your thoughts, what are your feelings, what are other people's feelings. It can be really, a lot of times portals struggle with mental health issues because there's just so much information coming in at one time. They're almost like a tornado spinning. Portals are like this spiral. And so they're the ones who, when they can truly hone in on their gifts, can be like, okay, guys, you want to astral travel? Let's go. And you can take other people with you to where you want to go. So portals make really great meditation facilitators, healers, because you can actually be that bridge for people. And so portals make really good, seers, mediums, people who can easily connect to all of those dimensions. And I also like to describe portals as organized chaos, because their energy is spinning so much like this, that they're very much like, when they can bring it all back in, are the people that are like, I know this room's a mess, but I also know where everything in it is. And so those are the portals.
That's funny. Yeah, I resonate with that a little bit. So yeah, I'm gonna have to look more into that because, and I'm kind of like in this spot of so when I first started getting like the spiritual awakening and stuff, I would listen to things, meditate, do all the things, listened, like I just was in the zone of listening to things constantly. And it's kind of has been like this, like then I'll go in waves of not listening or doing anything. And maybe I'm more focused on something else, but I'm kind of like in this space now of like kind of going more into it, deeply into it. And I'm trying to follow more, like be more intuitive, because I've felt very intuitive at like it's so hard to explain. But I'm trying to tap more into all of that. Like I don't know. I feel like there's just something there, and I'm gonna be doing something maybe within my business or a business that's gonna involve like something spiritually. And I just don't know yet, but I just feel it.
Mm-hmm. You want to know what it is
Yes.
that's standing in your way?
Yeah.
Doubting the fact that you can do it in the first place.
Holy cow. Yep. My girlfriend's like, yup. That's so true. And I think that I mean, I know that it's even like a subconscious thing, I think.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, there's so many layers to it. And for those of us who are super connected in that way, I mean, think of all the times in history where we've stepped out with our spiritual gifts and they're like, nope, that's not happening. Okay, burn the witches, religious persecution, everything that happened in Atlantis, we have repeatedly, like, our soul remembers. And I think that's why it feels so hard for so many of us to step out and say, I'm intuitive, I can, do this and that and talk to all these interdimensions, because our soul's like, hell no, you're not doing that again, because we remember what happened to us last time. And it's a lot of conditioning to work through. And then our human mind and our ego turns that into not only like, don't do it because you're not going to be safe doing it, but also like, is this real? You might be crazy, because it's been reflected back to us through the relationships and in our tangible world that not everyone sees the world the way that you do. And just because they can't see it doesn't mean that it's not real.
Yep. And I also know that I have a lot of self-doubt and just self-doubt with a lot of things in life too. Like I'm trying to work through that because even with my like current business or just with I guess mostly with my business, like I feel like I do, that is definitely like I hold myself back because of that. And I'm trying to work through it. I'm trying not to doubt myself, but
it's human. We all do it.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And if we had full access to knowing all the things that we should know about ourselves, we'd probably go crazy because we'd be so overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. So it's also in claiming that, and each time you remove that little piece, you just become more powerful. So it's like that gradual build of power.
Yeah.
Otherwise we would short circuit and our body would be like, I don't know what to do with all of this like knowing and energy.
Yep. Very true. Wow. Okay. That was good. Let's see. Oh yeah. Can you explain what channeler is? Like, I think I have a good understanding. For anyone listening, what is a channeler? What do they do?
Yeah, this is hard because I have a love-hate relationship with the word and I don't know a better word to describe it. So I started channeling basically through automatic writing. And what I started doing was basically documenting what was coming through in meditation. And at first I would just write down like, I saw a Christmas tree and an alligator and the number 4. And that was it. And then during the beginning of the pandemic, I started doing, Gabby Bernstein has some meditation for automatic writing where you do a meditation, you write down like, thank you, guide, something, blah, blah, blah. And then you just trust whatever comes through. And in doing that exercise a bunch of times and kind of removing that judgment of the information that was coming through, that's how I started. And then I just kept documenting and documenting. I started taking voice memos and just got to the point where between that and through training my brain in meditation could basically just get to a state of consciousness where I could access source wisdom is what I like to call it. And the other thing with that is what I was practicing is getting a feel for my own energy field, what it felt like to just sit here. And then so I could recognize if there was another energy coming through. And then in recognizing that, asking, who are you? And then trusting through those exercises that the answer that I receive is true. And so it's kind of this ultimate practice of self-trust and learning how to get yourself into a different state of consciousness and removing the self-doubt. And then just through practicing that, developing my channel to then now where I can kind of just tune in and access that information. But it's interesting in working with people who kind of have the same gifts. I access a lot of different information than other people do, where I can't be like, this is going to happen to you 5 years in the future. I can't do that for people, but mine is more like, oh, you want to know source wisdom or connect with these certain frequencies, I can do that. So it's been very interesting. So channels are basically kind of exactly that. People who can access source wisdom, whether it's straight from source, God, the universe, or if it's from, there's trans channels too, people who can like put themselves under and then speak through a different being. I can't do that. I can like listen and understand and then relay it back to you, but I can't be like, they're speaking through me. But there's people who can do that, and basically being the vessel for interdimensional different realm wisdom, I guess is the best way I'd put it.
Yeah. Wow, that's so fascinating. Because like the question came to me because I've heard people say like I'm a channeler or I've went to a channeler or whatever, but then I'm like, well, what even is like, what does that even mean? So, but it sounds like there's just different, it depends on who it is. And and it was cool that you put to practice certain things, and then over time, like I feel like anything and everything is a practice to get better at it or to learn more and stuff. So that's cool. I'm gonna look into automatic writing.
Yes, I have a meditation for it that I channeled, so I'll send that to you.
Yes, that would be amazing. I've been trying to meditate every morning too, and it's been because I used to meditate every single day. I was super consistent with it, and then of course, like I probably went a year without it, and then I just was like, pulling me to do it again, because I just feel like, I mean, I'm sure you know, just like with myself and just connecting to my being and like my soul and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm trying to tap back and do more meditation. So yeah, that would be great if I could get that
Yeah.
to do. And okay, so the other thing too, I saw on your website, because you were talking about the ascended master frequency, and then also with galactic allies and things. And then you put it said rays of Sophia consciousness. So my name is Sophia, so of course naturally, what is that? I'm
So
curious.
Sophia consciousness would be another description for like what Christ consciousness is, but it's the feminine, divine feminine version of that. So the Sophia consciousness is basically the lineage of beings. Think Mary Magdalene, Mother Mary, the Hathors, Kuan Yin, all these divine feminine beings. So it's basically the feminine version of Christ consciousness. And there's actually an amazing book. Do I have it here? No, I don't know what it is, but it's called the Sophia Code. And this woman basically channeled these activations and meditations from all of these beings who are part of the Sophia consciousness. So like Isis, Mary Magdalene, Mother Mary, Kuan Yin, Hathor, and yeah, so the Sophia consciousness is really the divine feminine movement of that pure love, unconditional love
Okay.
movement that
Yeah.
people would call, 5D, Christ consciousness, ascension. It's all basically the same thing, but the Sophia is specifically the divine feminine aspect of that.
Okay, gotcha. So I did a with a friend. I should reach back out to her, but she has been working on, this was not has been, I don't know what she's doing right now, but at the time she was working on like Reiki and trying to practice. She wanted to do like spiritual counseling, and she wanted to practice with astrology reading and Akashic records. And so we did a whole thing, like a 30-minute, where I was like lying down and she was channeling or doing whatever. And pretty sure it was with her Mother Mary came to her when something, she didn't like write this down. I'm pretty sure I wrote down somewhere different things, but she told me to look up Mother Mary, and that like came to her when we were doing that. And I kind of forgot about that until just now. And I didn't know I didn't know Sophia consciousness was all of that.
Yep. Yeah. So
Sure.
I mean, we're seeing it come through in many different ways right now in spirituality. It's like the womb wellness, the rose codes, the kind of activating of the goddess and the feminine. That's the Sophia consciousness, is like just the overarching umbrella of all that.
So kind of speaking about past lives now, I'm so curious to know, when you met your sister from a past life, how did you know? What did it feel like? Tell me more, please.
Okay. So we met, we didn't even meet through a mutual friend. We were connected on Instagram through a mutual friend. And so this was April of last year, and we met for the first time because it's when I was starting the beta version and trying to figure out what a cooperative of healers would look like. And she had been kind of liking my Instagram stories. We had chatted a little bit through Instagram, and then we met on Zoom for the first time. And I was like, wow, this woman's really cool. I love her so much. We feel the same about all the things that are happening in the world. And then we kind of both went into these deep cocoons of healing over the summer. And I remember I was sitting outside. I have this, like, I call it the portal out in my backyard. It just feels like there's some kind of energy portal there. And I just got this hit that I should reach back out to Farah. And so I sent her a message and said, hey, I'm just thinking of you. I've been going through a lot this summer. Would love to reconnect. And she sent me back a message saying, oh my gosh, I've been going through the exact same thing. And this was probably end of August, September. So then we had another meeting and we started talking about Egypt. And we were both saying there's just something there. And it was something that both of us felt such a strong pull to. And I hate dead things, but I love mummies. And I've watched every Egypt documentary that has ever been created. I love it. It just speaks to my soul. And we were just bonding over that. And then we're like, I think there's something there, but we didn't really look into it. And then on the 1111 portal, on 11/11, I had a meeting with my spiritual advisor, and I was telling her exactly like what you just said. I was like, I feel like there's something here. There's something right here, but I have no idea what it is. And I just feel like I could grab it, but I have no idea what it is. And so she gave me this whole ceremony to go through, and I did it in the shower. She's like, this is going to change your life forever. And as you step out of the shower, you're going to be a whole new person. So I expected to like step out and feel something, right? And I get out of the shower because she wanted me to do it in the bathtub, but our bathtub sucks. And I'm like, oh, nothing happened. That night, a huge black bear came to my house. And then the next day, I had another Zoom meeting with her and with Farah. And so we decided to just do a meditation together. So like, let's tune into this Egypt thing. Let's just meditate together and see what happens. And so we're sitting there in meditation, and both of us at the same time just kind of gasp. And then we come out of the meditation and we're like, what did you see? What did you see? Wait, what did you see? Like we both had the same vision that we were sisters. And it was like in that moment, in both of us saying that out loud and claiming it, it just unlocked so much. And then we were gradually able to go back through meditation and have the same visions of this past life together in Egypt, where she was the queen and I was her sister. And we did all this work with the priestesses in this temple. And so that was November 12th. And then by the December solstice, we had created this whole women's circle called Sisters of Sirius, where we just started bringing women together. And we, in between that time, she's a channel too, basically channeled all of the healing that we were doing in Egypt in the temple with these priestesses and have brought it into this lifetime. So now we're hosting women's circles using the same healing and modalities that we used in Egypt in these circles, and it has just been mind-blowing. It's just there's no words for it. And so that's why that's kind of how the ascended master frequency happened too, because I was like, please someone explain to me what's happening, because I don't have any words to how we can remember these things, come together with our gifts, and then have these women. We had women who were just having the most life-changing experiences happening at our circles. Like one died and was reborn, another one turned into a whale, and it's just like crazy things have happened to women in our circles. And so my sister, her main archetype is an alchemist. So she's a very powerful energy healer. And then you bring in me, the activator, and we're basically creating, and she's a portal too. And so basically creating this portal for really magical things to happen, because as soon as you're coming into our energy, not only are you being cleared of your energy, but things are being activated within you. And so yeah. So now we have been doing it we've been doing it since the solstice in December. And every other Tuesday we host these circles, and we do one-on-one custom activations. And it's been so magical, because going back to what you said before of feeling like no one understood or had the same understanding, it was with the remembering of her that I finally, for the first time, felt like my gifts were actually validated in the external, because I had been understanding all these things in meditation, downloading. I feel like I was almost practicing. It was almost like Dumbledore's army, when they're like practicing in the hidden room. I almost felt like that for years. And then it was finally like, oh, my gifts are now activated in the external world. And that changed everything for me. And I remember just a month into it, just sobbing and thinking to myself, I finally feel like I'm home, because my external meets my internal world finally, where I don't feel like I'm crazy anymore, and finally have the external experiences that validate all these things I have been remembering about myself, but that no one else could see up until this moment. And so it's been life-changing and amazing. And now we're exploring all the other past lives that we've had together, and we're just like bonded for life. And just that remembering it's amazing, and also
Yeah.
indescribable almost.
Yeah. I can imagine. That is amazing.
And I would also say that we still haven't met in person, because she lives in Toronto and I live in New Jersey. And so we're waiting for all the border stuff to clear up, and then hopefully we'll meet in person.
Yeah. I would be so curious to know how that is. Like, if they're like, you guys are just going to see each other, and I can just imagine like the feeling. I mean, I can't imagine, but like there'll be something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's so
I
cool.
can't wait. I can't wait.
Yeah, yeah. Very cool. Yeah. So, the Sisters of Sirius, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Is that like also a group? So first of all, the Enlightenedhood one, is that like a
Yeah.
Facebook group or something else? I can't remember.
So it's so much bigger than that. So we have this it's actually great that you asked this question. So within the House of Enlightenedhood platform, we have sacred spaces, which were almost like a Facebook group, but they're run by the members of our cooperative. So you can go onto our platform and join all these different groups. Right now, we have one that's the Lemurian archive. So if you're interested in the ancient land of Lemuria, we're posting resources there. We have our own Sisters of Sirius sacred space where you can go and integration after our circles. We post everything that comes through. We're also going to start hosting like meetups within there. I have my own sacred space within there that I just share my channelings and videos. So they're very much like groups or little communities. We also have some paid programs. So the Ascended Master Frequency will exist all within there. We also have the Women's School in there, which my dear friend Mari Vega is like a paid women's cyclical living group container. And so all of the cooperative members have the ability to create their own little community within our platform.
Cool. Okay, so it's a completely separate platform than like Facebook or anything.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, very cool. I
Censor
remember that
free,
now.
algorithm free. It's our own private. Yeah.
Oh gosh, okay, I need to get in
Yeah.
on that.
Yes. Yep.
So awesome. Okay, can we talk about A New Earth? What is I've read the book A New Earth, but like, yeah, tell us more about what that is and everything.
Oh, this is my favorite thing. So I have known since the moment I got the download for the word enlightenedhood that what I was building was something that hadn't existed before. And I didn't really put the term new earth or even know what the new earth was until recently when I realized, oh, this is what we're doing. And to me, the new earth is really a new paradigm of existence, a new way of being. Some people would also call it the fifth dimension, but I feel like the fifth dimension or 5D or ascension just feels kind of intangible. And I will admit that for a really long time, I was kind of, especially when the pandemic hit, I was kind of waiting. I don't know if anyone else felt this way, for the world to implode. And they're like, oh, this is when the new earth kind of rises out of the ocean. And we're like, ta-da, it's here. But then I came to the really harsh realization that we had to build it ourselves. That we had to be the change and almost be that Trojan horse from the inside, the ones who we decide that it starts with us. So to me, the new earth, especially with spirituality, is creating a new paradigm of spirituality that, like I said before, where we believe that all the answers are within us. And not just that, but removing capitalism from spirituality, removing the ways that we have really appropriated or commoditized others' sacred wisdom, and kind of bringing that back to the right lineages. So decolonization is a huge part of that. And also just removing these, I say this with so much love, but the self-proclaimed gurus that have decided that they are the only ones, and finding a way for us all to remove the hierarchy so we can all rise together kind of with the current of the new earth. So the new earth is really all of us declaring that it starts with us, and then how do we work together to build the new systems and structures, or reimagine the ones we already have to be able to serve everyone, to stop with the systemic oppression and these huge paywalls that are keeping people from the wisdom and the tools and the healing in the community. And how do we bridge those gaps to make this a new way of living where we are all safe, secure, abundant, healthy, vibrant in just the way that we are. And I think that also looks a lot more like community organizations and bringing things back home to a more sovereign way, and kind of these micro ways of living that are all about supporting local and supporting people who have really pure intentions, and removing our time and energy from the corporations and the people who are still promoting this way that keeps us powerless and sick and and outside of ourselves.
Amazing. So it sounds like it's like you said, like we have to do the work, right? To
Yeah.
like it, and it's not really it's just a new way of living and
Yes.
being.
Yeah.
And then also like you had mentioned, like community is like a huge thing with you, for you, and what you're doing. And what I wrote it down because it said wisdom is currency, community is medicine, healing is collective. So like all of that going into the like new earth too. And I read that and I was like, ooh, I want to know more about that.
Yeah, so I channeled that basically as what I would say the 3 pillars of the new earth are. So wisdom being currency, meaning that we kind of take someone's credibility right now for their certificates, for the amount of Instagram followers they have, for how pretty their marketing looks. And something my guides told me years ago is that we've been conditioned to choose beauty over wisdom. And so how do we return to a space that allows our innate wisdom and our lived experiences to be enough, and not only to be enough, but to be credible to others? So wisdom is currency in the way that like what we have to say and what comes through us is enough. And that's kind of the vibrancy and the glue that holds us all together in the new earth.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's awesome. And with community is medicine, healing is collective.
Yeah.
That
So
just kind of came to you too.
yes. So with community as medicine, I think that we forget so much how much we need to give and receive. And in receiving, and not only receiving, but being fully seen and witnessed on our path, and having the safe spaces to just be fully ourselves and to let our guard down and to be seen in our rawness and to be held by others, and for all of us to collectively use our gifts to uplift one another. I think that's what the true medicine is. And so I think community, we weren't meant to do this alone. So community is medicine because it's what holds us. It's what uplifts us when we're feeling down, and then we get to turn around and help others. And it's that kind of, infinity symbol of giving and receiving and witnessing others and being seen for ourselves. And I think that's such a huge part, and also what we're lacking it right now, because community is so important. But if you bring it back to the capitalistic version of spirituality, it's also a huge part of someone's, let's say, click funnel, of their business. You pay to be in this person's community so you can be part of their selling you of their services almost, right?
Mhm.
So how do we bring community back to the basics, but also allow us to be abundant in our gifts? Because it's not saying that we shouldn't share what we're offering. We shouldn't be allowed to serve. We shouldn't be abundant in how we can help others. But how we do it in a way that's much more full of integrity and allows people to feel safe and not like a marketing number.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that with community too, a lot of people, they feel like they need to do things on their own, or like, I can do this on my own. And it's like, I don't know if weakness is the right word, but maybe it's like seen as a weakness to ask for help or to be a part of a community. But it's just that's where we can like everything you just said, and then also build relationships and meet new people and like all of that.
Yeah. Yes. And then with healing is collective, I think going back to the ancient times like Lemuria, Atlantis, Egypt, we understood that there was a collective responsibility, that if our entire group as humans maintained a specific amount of healing or understanding or frequency, that we could access these bigger emotions of love, our spiritual gifts, the gifts that we think only exist in sci-fi, like telepathy and telekinesis and all these things. And so there was this greater understanding that we all had the responsibility to heal together. And we've kind of lost that now, because when there's such business focus on spirituality, enlightenment has become directly correlated to our income and race. So the people who need the most healing, who need these tools, who need community, are now left out. So it's also this idea that we don't rise as a human collective unless we do it together. And how can we find more supportive ways for all of us to be abundant, to find healing, to find community in a way that is the boat in the tide that rises?
Yeah, yep. And I also saw on when I was reading things, energy activations. So, because I know we talked about activations, and that's probably the same thing, energy activations, and that's a part of the healing too, like the healing process. You actually do energy activations.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's what I do. I work with my sister Farah. We do the custom activations, and then it just naturally happens to me too. But
So,
we do specific ones where we channel like what someone needs, but then I
okay,
also just do one-on-ones
gotcha.
too.
Yeah, so I was curious to know like what that looked like how you guys do like the energy activations, if it's a meditation with someone or kind of what the process is for that.
So we do it similarly for our group circles and then the one-on-ones where we come together and we sit in meditation and we just tune into either the energy of the person or the energy of the group. And then we basically craft a guided visualization to help the person visualize what we're seeing of the healing that needs to happen. And a lot of times it's with different elements. So sometimes it's like walking through fire or going to a bathhouse or, going into mud. And there's a bunch of, we always see very visually what needs to happen and then basically write out a guided visualization meditation. And then there's always a point in those ceremonies where it's quiet and there's music playing and we're doing remote healing work. And then I'm usually the one who's kind of tuning in to questions like, is it a past life thing? What are their guides saying, to kind of give everyone a full picture when they come out on the other side.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Do you have like a story or like someone specific who has had an incredible transformation with you, like you working with someone? Do you have is there any story sticking out to you?
Yeah. So we've had a lot of women who first started coming to our circles with really heavy mental health issues, like really not comfortable in their body, suffering from anxiety and depression, really scared to use their voice and to speak, and just felt really trapped and constricted in their life. And I'm thinking of a few because this has happened for a few of the women. And we didn't realize in the first circle that we did what was going to happen, because there was a lot of energy that was moved and we weren't prepared for what was going to happen to the women after. And a lot of them got really sick and a lot of them had like a lot of energy moving through them. Luckily a lot were local to the Toronto area, so we were able to send them to like some chiropractors and energy healers to help move that energy, but we didn't realize what was actually happening in our circles. Once we actually realized that and we started creating room for integration and sharing experiences, we had women who were coming and saying, this is the first time that I have actually felt the lower half of my body. This is the first time that I've cried in the last 6 months. This is the first time that I have been able to speak up and say what I actually need. And there are women who are having these really profound activations and rememberings. And what's been coming up for a lot of women too recently is these Atlantis woundings. And even in just saying that and talking a little bit about what's been happening, we've also had women just with that kind of byline, tagline summary of what's happening say, oh my gosh, that's exactly what's coming up, and putting words to it too. So I'm kind of able to see, while we're doing the energy healing, the roots of the wounds that are coming up. And then my sister Farah, because she's the alchemist, is kind of able to go in and pull them out and do the energy healing. So the combination of kind of putting those words to what you're feeling but can't quite express yet, and then also the energy healing, has been a really powerful combination.
Wow. That's cool. well, it's not cool that they got sick, but just that you like didn't realize like,
Well, yeah, we didn't realize that we were gonna like be moving so much energy within
yeah,
people.
yeah.
We were more responsible about that now.
So with your book, let's talk about your book. What is it
Yeah.
called? What's all it? What did you write about? Tell us more.
So it's called Dear Luna Wilde, and it's a collection of 2 years of letters to my daughter. And so to go way, way back before I shared with you kind of during my pregnancy, but what actually happened before that was my mom's mom passed away in April of 2018. And it was around the same time that my husband and I decided that we were, ready to start a family. And just at that time, my grandma passed away. And so I took the drive to and stayed with my mom in her house. And it was me, my mom, my aunt, and my two cousins, like the women of our family planning her funeral. And I ended up being the one to deliver the eulogy and to give a really small version of my childhood trauma. I was very severely bullied in high school and at the same time was in a domestically abusive relationship. So prior to that, I was the performing kid, the one who was up on stage singing solos. I volunteered to give a flute solo in church after only playing it for 3 weeks, like that type of that type of energy kid. And that kind of all got put on the back burner after all the wounding that happened to me in high school. So I always had that person who wanted to be the speaker, to stand up, to perform, to use my voice, but I always felt like it was squashed in some way. And so in giving her eulogy, it was a really healing experience for me where I felt like for the first time in a very long time, I stood up in front of a group of people and used my voice in a way where I felt like I nailed every beat. And I say this a lot and it sounds terrible, but it was like a really good stand-up comedy act. And my grandma would have loved it. There were a lot of jokes and punchlines in there, and it was really well received, I promise. But it was the first time in a really long time where I felt like I was me again. And it was that experience that I then went home to my grandma's house that night. And I wrote a letter to my future unborn child saying, I need to find myself again. And I promise to find myself again because I don't want you to acquire all this emotional baggage I have over the last 10, 15 years. This is my promise to find myself again. And so the book then became that letter and all the letters that followed, kind of just really healing because I didn't feel like anyone else would really listen. So I wrote her a letter about how her and her dad, how I, like, what the words work, how her parents met and like how I met my husband and the story of that. And it just became this unfolding of me telling my story through these letters that I didn't even realize until I had some put together. So it's a collection of that first letter, which is the preface to her, the day that we buried my grandma, up until a little after her first birthday, and just my healing journey, my past, everything I've gone through, plus going through a spiritual awakening and postpartum depression and all these health issues up until I think, yeah, almost right until the first version of my business burned to the ground.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. I feel like a lot of mothers will be, and I'm sure have related to like some of the things that you
Yeah.
wrote. Yeah.
And a lot of them are, some of them are about motherhood, but they're really just about womanhood and claiming yourself and finding your voice and your power. And I'm thinking about this for the first time is that after a bunch of people read my book, they said they were activated by it, which I'm now like coming full circle, realizing this as I'm telling you this, that, oh, duh, makes sense now. But
Yeah. Wow. So then, okay, how old is your daughter now?
She just turned 3 in March.
Oh, nice. And her
Yeah.
name is Luna.
Yeah, Luna Wilde.
Oh, beautiful. I love that name. I'm curious now, what are some ways that you're going to kind of instill like the spiritual aspect of life into her as she grows up?
So I ask her all the time and she still hasn't answered me. But the message I received from my guides, because I was asking them, why did she choose me as her mom? And they told me to help her remember who she is. Like that's not a huge responsibility or anything.
Bumps.
Um,
Yeah.
so I constantly ask her, who were you before you were Luna? Where did you come from? She hasn't given me a good answer yet, but she's just now speaking in full sentences. But I meditate in front of her. We talk to nature and the trees. I'm also super into conscious parenting and really just letting her be herself. And the unlearning of the parenting is just it's a mind fuck in itself of just all the things that we've been taught, like don't cry, it's okay, and instead being asking her, are you okay, not telling her how she feels, and every facet of trying to really be present with her and allowing her to feel and express and experience the world and in her own way, not through my over my lens or my filter. And that's been, oh man, it has been the greatest healing experience. And it's also, if they say anything about parenthood that's true, is that it's the most triggering experience in the world because it just brings up all your own shit. And and then trying to do that with someone else who's also being triggered by all their own shit. It's just
Yep.
it's a lot, but it's been such a healing experience. And it just keeps getting better and better now that we can talk and just I am trying to really instill that connection to the universe and connection to nature within her because I don't want her to lose that access. So yesterday I got this little fairy door. It's like this big that I had out last summer, but last summer she wasn't ready for it. And yesterday I told her, I said, this is where the fairies live. And all afternoon she was knocking on the door saying, fairies, it's me, Luna. Are you there? And so even just that wonderment and having her exist in a world where she can talk to fairies and they exist, and I don't want her to lose that. And it's so
Yep.
fun now to be able to craft a world with her where the possibilities are endless. But it also is scary sometimes where she'll just say, Mommy, who's that over there? And there's no one standing there, or and she'll look up and say, who's that? So we haven't gotten to the bottom of that yet. But she also feeds a ghost cat that lives at our house. So that's fun. It's like, here, kitty,
Wow.
kitty, here, kitty, kitty. Yeah.
Wow. I'm curious, like what is gonna come of all that.
I know, me too. I can't wait. I'm just waiting for the day where she actually answers me of
Mm-hmm.
where she came from and who she was, because I don't want her to lose that, because I think we
Yeah.
all have those gifts in childhood and then they're squashed by the real world. And
Oh yeah. The conditioning process. Yeah.
yeah.
How are you going to like help her to not I don't know what I'm trying to say, like to not let her lose that and to kind of stay away from that conditioning process.
That's a great question. Not exactly sure yet. But it's interesting because I am watching even my husband's friends who I believed I had not that much in common with. I'm watching their school age children and their experiences and the ways that unschooling and homeschooling and microschooling are becoming a theme in a lot of people we know's life. And so my hope is by the time that she's ready for school, that it's going to look a lot unstructured like that, and making that decision that I'm in full control of giving her the opportunity to be what she came here to be. And I think so many of the souls who are coming to earth now know what they're stepping into, and that being the new earth, a new way of doing things.
Oh yeah.
And so giving her the opportunity to fully be herself. And it's funny because my husband was a school teacher up until December, where he left because it was too much. And after he left, I said, I feel like it's okay to say now that I don't want to send her to school, or at least the typical type of school, because it just doesn't feel right. She's just, everyone just almost always comments on, first thing they say is her hair, because she got my hair and it's just a lot of hair for a tiny little human. And then they say just how she's just a ball of joy and light. And I just want her to be able to feel safe in expressing that and be able to explore so many different parts of that. And it just, when I tune into sending her to school, it just doesn't feel right. So
Yeah.
I'm just going based on my own intuition and also following her lead, because I think we've also been conditioned that we own our children or that they're ours, when really they're an equal human
Yeah.
who should have say,
Just got
in
goosebumps again.
in their lives, and treating her like a human and not like a little baby. So that's also
Yeah.
hard when she acts like one, but
Yeah. Well, that's a great way of like my eyes have been open to a new perspective of that. That's so I've never thought about that before. That really did give me goosebumps when you said that. And I think it's so amazing too that when if she like looks up and says like, "Mommy, who's that?" Not just like shutting her down instantly, like
yeah,
nothing's there. So that's awesome that you like just allow that and just like
yeah.
continue, just allow her to, do that. So very cool. If whenever I get pregnant eventually, like I might be coming to you. Because on Instagram and stuff, I'm trying to follow people who have like same like-minded as as you, conscious parenting and things like that. I'm just gonna really want to dive deeper into that too eventually.
The book that where'd it go? It's not here. The book that awakened the beginning of that for me was The Conscious Parent by Shefali Sabari. So highly recommend that. And she has 3 or 4 books.
Okay, what's it called?
The Conscious Parent.
Okay, the conscious parent.
I don't know. Maybe it's a different color than what I'm imagining. I thought it was white.
Yeah.
It's not in my white section.
I love your bookshelf. It's so beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's my favorite thing.
Yeah, it's so pretty. So, okay, podcast. We'll wrap up here, but your podcast, talk more about that. What you talk about, the messages that you're bringing, who it's for.
Yes. So it's in kind of it's always in a transition period, because I feel like it's been my audio diary for the past 3 years. So it started as Enlightenedhood, the first season, very much motherhood, spirituality. Then it kind of expanded into season 2, and it's just been growing and growing. So you'll find that every season has a new intro and a little bit of a new mission.
That's cool.
And so I just ended season 4 with, I don't know if you know Coop Blackson. He's an amazing transformational speaker, but he was my last. I felt like it was just the perfect closer for season 4, because now that we're launching the in-person space and so much is happening, I felt like it was a good pause. But when it comes back for season 5, it's very much talking about the new earth, this deconstructed version of spirituality, and having these open and honest conversations with the people who are building that and creating it, and just diving into all things the new earth. So for instance, season 4, some of the episodes, I talked with my soul sister about Lemuria and the ancient land of Lemuria and why that's so important for the new earth. And then an episode with my sister Farah, and we went all into the past life stuff and the Egypt stuff, but then having other conversations. Like I had a beautiful conversation with a mental health counselor about suffering and why we suffer and how we can use suffering as a gift and a beacon of hope, and then talking about surrender and using our voice. So it's really for people who are at any stage on the path, who really want the expanded perspective that spirituality doesn't have to necessarily look a certain way, and that our messy humanness is what makes us spiritual. It's what makes us divine, is the messy things that we go through, because they're all sacred learning lessons, and just the remembering of that. So it's really a container to approach spirituality in a more grounded, human, messy way, and to talk about all different facets of our being. And it's my favorite thing in the world, and I just love talking about it all.
Yeah. So with this, you have a new season coming up then, season 5. Is there a
Yeah.
starting point for that? And do you release every week, or how do you do that? Or just unsure right now?
it was weekly, and then just the world got the best of me, and then it was bi-weekly, and so I'm thinking it will be bi-weekly. They're usually released on Fridays, so hopefully by the middle of the summer, once the space and our revamped like online platform is all finished, and I'll get back into season 5. And I also have a promise out to a lot of our cooperative members to have them on. So it will be a lot of like the inner workings of the people who are building our organization, boots on the ground in the new earth, but also having these really fun conversations about the universe.
Cool. Yeah, that'll be awesome.
But I have 101 episodes done already. So there's a whole library if you want to catch
Yeah.
up.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna be catching up on some of those for sure. So last couple questions. What would be like, is there anything else that you want to say or a message you want to give? Anything at all? Anyone that's listening that you just feel the need that you want to say and tell them?
Yes, I want to say that you already know the answer. And to stop doubting yourself that you already know. And it's not some
Perfect.
crazy come to universe moment, you already know.
Yep, perfect. I love it. People are gonna in that moment be like, wow, I need to hear that. And I know because I needed to hear that. So okay, last question. My podcast is called Flow with the Grow. So I love asking people their opinion and kind of what comes to mind to them. So when you hear Flow with the Grow, what comes to mind for you?
What comes to mind to me is that healing is not linear, and it's up to us to surrender to the non-linearity. Is that even a word? Non-linearity of our path, and know that it's not point A to point B, that there's ups and downs and ebbs and flows. And the more that we can flow like a river with our going, the easier it will become when we can remove our expectations of what it's going to actually look like.
Beautiful. I love that. If someone wants to reach out to you, where can they find you? What are you kind of working on? All the things. I'm going to link everything, but yeah, go ahead
You
and
can
share
find me in so many places. You can find me. Our House of Enlightenedhood Instagram is at Enlightenedhood, but actually, I have decided to really not use that platform because we're focusing all of our intention within the community. So come join us in there. That's houseofenlightenedhood.com, or you can get access by going to community.houseofenlightenedhood.com, and that's where you sign up to go into the platform. You can find me on Instagram at Leena of Light, and my Ascended Master Frequency offerings right now are at leenalemos.com. But when we launch our new website and space, they will be moved over to House of Enlightenedhood. And then also the third one is Sisters of Sirius. We have a space within House of Enlightenedhood, and then our Instagram is Sisters of Sirius.
Okay, awesome. I will link all that in the show notes. Check out all the things.
Yay.
I just want to say thank you so much for coming on, being so willing to talk about all of this, so open, and I'm so grateful for just this entire time. It's almost been an hour and a half with me, and
Woo!
thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. It's been so fun.